So today I'm going to take you through the process of tying up your horse safely, or as safely as you can. I'm going to be using a young horse. This is something that can be done with new horses or young horses. The process is essentially the same for everything, but it's the safest way that we have found here to start young horses being tied up. But before we get started, we have to go over some equipment, because the kind of equipment you use can make or break how well this is going to work. So first of all, when tying up a young horse, or any horse, I always prefer a nice long cotton rope. This one is about 8 feet long. It's got a heavy-duty snap on it, because you don't want them to break your snaps, because once they get away, they're away forever. They're not, once they figure that out, that is the hardest habit to ever break if they get away the first time you tie them up. You don't want anything with a chain on it. Never ever tie a horse with a chain. If they pull back, they can cut their nose open, they can do severe damage to their face. It's just not a good idea at all, and it's going to scare them to death when that pulls tight. So you want something like this, nice and sturdy and nice and soft for your hands. Now, what a lot of people buy, and we have them here, as you can see, because they are pretty. They buy these cotton blend, nylon, multi-designed lead lines. You can find them any tack store you want. They're very pretty. You can get them in all kinds of multiple colors. The problem with these that I have found is the material they use slides right through your hands, and it causes severe rope burns. These will tear your hands up faster than anything else that I have found. Anything with a coating on it is going to rip right through your skin. So if you do want to use these, and we do use them a lot here, we never tie with them, but we use them as lead ropes, try to pick a horse that's not going to pull you. You know, something that's old and as reliable as horses can be, because this is the one incident where if the horse runs away, do not hold on to the rope. Let go, because it's going to save your hands. Your hands, I don't have a burn right now, but I had one a couple weeks ago, and these will tear your hands up. So even though we've all been told since forever to hold on to the rope if the horse pulls, in these particularly, just let it go and catch the horse. It's much safer for you, and ultimately for them, because now they've learned that they can pull and get away, where if you just let go and go grab them, they might not remember that they actually pulled you anywhere. The next thing you're going to want is a nice strong nylon halter. You don't want to use leather when tying up a horse unless you want them to get away. Leather halters are pretty, and they are designed to break. That is what they're for. That is why people use them on trailers. They are specifically designed with that nice supple leather so that if your horse gets tangled up in the trailer and they pull away, the leather will snap and you don't have to worry about them getting stuck in the trailer. Nylon, on the other hand, if a horse pulls, nylon's going to win every time. It's strong, it's durable, it's not going to break. Your chances of breaking this nylon are close to breaking a chain. So when tying up a young horse in particular, you want to use something sturdy. You never want them to get the idea that they can pull back and break out of that tie, because like I said, years and years of discipline to get them back to tying up, and then you have to be real careful where you tie them, because they're always going to try that pullback method to get loose. The other thing you're going to want is a pair of boots. These are just regular rubber boots. You can use cowboy boots, you can use paddock boots, whatever kind of boots you want. The point is you want something smooth on top so that when you get stepped on, because we all get stepped on at some point, the horse's foot doesn't have anything to catch on, that it just slides off the toe. So anything with a lot of scrolling or any kind of ornate design on the toe of the boot, I wouldn't recommend something. You want something nice and smooth so that when that foot steps on you, it's just going to slide right off. Because typically horses won't pick their foot back up, they'll just slide it right off of your foot. So always want your feet covered. You don't ever want to come down in flip-flops or sandals or something like that, especially when you're doing what we're going to be doing. Another piece of equipment that a lot of people like, a good pair of gloves. These are nice soft leather gloves. You don't want gardening gloves or anything like that. They're not designed for this kind of work. I typically use gloves if I'm working horses outside or if I'm lunging. For this kind of thing, I don't use them. It's just a preference for me, but my hands are pretty tore up already. So, but if you want to protect your hands, or if your hands have real thin skin, or if you're prone to getting rope burns or tears, you want to use a nice soft pair of gloves that's going to help you grip rather than a pair of work gloves where things might slide. So all of these things are the equipment bin. Some's recommended. This stuff you do need, and let's get started. Alright, so this is Raven. She is a 2-year-old Lipizzan mare. She's not a wild, feral horse. She's been stabled and led out to pasture ever since the day she was born, pretty much. So this is nothing new to her. Unfortunately, the idea of putting these videos together didn't come until after she had already been tied up pretty good, but we're going to do the best we can, at least for demonstrating purposes. So, again, the first thing you want is a nice cotton rope, nice nylon halter. The other thing that I did not go over, and I am a firm believer in, is any kind of horse treat. Bribery will get you a long way as far as horses are concerned, particularly if they're already food-oriented. You can pretty much get them to do almost anything you want if you've got the right kind of treat. So, and it always helps to really give that positive reinforcement when they've done something good. Because patting and stroking and everything, that's all well and good, but it's kind of like kids. You're going to get a lot further if you give them that Hershey's Kiss. So, and as far as my dog's concerned, it works for him too. So, some people are worried about horses getting nippy if you treat them too much. We've never really had that problem. The key is to not tease them with the treats. If you're going to give them a treat, give them the treat. Don't give it to them, then take it away, then give it to them again, because that does make them nasty. So we've had very, very few horses that get nippy because of treats. So the first thing you want to do, the most important thing besides your equipment, is you want to find something nice and sturdy. If you've got really good ties on your trailer and you don't mind a horse whacking the side of it, because they will strike it with their feet, possibly if it's their first time out, you want to find something like a tree or a post, something that's not going to pull back when they pull back, because depending on the size of the horse you're doing, and I do recommend at least introducing young horses, I'd say within the first 3-4 months, lightly start playing with them, with tying them up. You don't walk away from them, obviously, but you give them the idea that they're getting tied to a stationary object. They weigh a lot less, they can do a lot less damage to themselves, and it's just easier on everybody all the way around. A lot of times you can tie them up and they don't even know that they're tied. The bigger the horse, the more weight involved. So now you've got something that's somewhere between 500 and 600 pounds pulling against this, as opposed to something that's between 200 and 300 pounds pulling against this. So it does cause a little bit more of an issue the bigger your horse gets, and particularly if you have a rescue horse and they've had any problems tying in the past. So to first get them started, you don't want to tie them up right away. You want to just wrap your rope around something. Hopefully you use a smooth post or something metal, so that you can slide it back and forth. Because when they first tie up, they're going to pull back. They're going to have that one moment of instantaneous yanking back. When that happens, they're going to throw all of their weight back that way. A lot of people think they'll feel pressure here, they'll come forward. That's not the case. They feel pressure here and they keep going backwards because they don't understand that to go forward, that pressure is going to get off. They haven't learned that yet. This is something new. So, and unfortunately, if you have a horse that has broken free, they know that eventually something in here is going to let go and they're going to get loose, pressure here or not. So you want to have something that when they pull back, you can give them line, you can move forward, this is going to slide, just enough to give them the pressure to come back off. You're never going to let them go, but you're going to release that pressure. So they kind of get the idea that even though they pulled back, they didn't get away and it didn't hurt them. That's the big thing. They have to learn that this is not going to hurt them. This isn't a bad thing. A lot of times when you start tying, once they get to the actual tying up phase, what I like to do, if I've got a feed bucket there and it's mealtime, It's always nice to tie them up while they're eating. Half the time they don't even realize that they're tied up. And a lot of times they're a lot more open to it because they're getting that instantaneous reward for being tied up. So it's always associated with something good, because there's going to be plenty of things that you do later on down the line that they're tied up for that they're not going to be so happy about, like baths or vaccines or the farrier. So you want to start all their earlier associations with being tied as a good thing. So also when they're tied up, and you'll learn this when we start doing her feet, I don't usually tie when I'm first picking up a horse's feet, because I do like that give and take when they're moving around to not have them panic so much. Another big thing that you want the first time you do this, you want to have an escape route, because a lot of horses the first time they're tied get very angry that they are now tied to something and they can't do what they want. So they'll throw themselves forward, they'll throw their weight around because now they want to get off of this rope. And if you're in their way, they're not trying to hurt you, but they want out of this. So if you just happen to be in their way, you're going to get smashed up against the wall. So it's always better if you can get out. And that's what I like about these long ropes. This rope is actually long enough that I can pull her there and I can still be outside of the stall in the event she tries to throw me into this barrier here. So really it's about getting out of their way until they're done with whatever they're doing. And then right away, as soon as they stop whatever they're doing, right away with the good boy, good girl, pat them, give them some kind of positive reinforcement, a carrot, whatever it takes, because you want them to associate, oh, standing nice and quiet next to this thing, good things happen. And I'm not throwing myself all over the place, and I'm not yanking my head. And eventually they'll get to the point where you can tie them to pretty much anything, and they don't care. And it's a lot easier than just tying them to a tree and leaving them there until they get tired. So the other thing a lot of people do with that method is they'll tie either an inner tube or a really thick bungee, something stretchy around the tree, and tie the horse to that. That also works really well because they're never pulling back super tight. It's got that give. You really want that give back and forth so that they're not getting enough pressure to ever snap the rope, and it's kind of tugging them forward a little bit. So it helps a lot more than if it's just a solid snap and then they can't go anywhere. So when you tie up, and again, a lot of physics involved here, if they're fretting, if they're moving around, if they're giving you any kind of a problem, I would not recommend tying them, and certainly don't walk away. If they're moving around and they're hesitant, they're scared, just stand here with your rope through, let them go back and forth, let them fidget, because they're going to do a lot of that the first time, particularly the first time through. Stay out of this area with them, because what a lot of horses have a tendency to do is their view on this is they have to get away from it, so they're going to strike at it, and they have a tendency to strike a lot higher than you think they can. And if you're in the way, your leg can get caught, your foot can get caught. I had one incident where my hand actually got hit and flew back. So you want to stay out of their area when they're fighting with this rope. Also, you never want to go back in here when you're first starting a horse, because you would be amazed at how fast they can swing around and how small they can compact themselves when they want to get away from something. So you always want to make sure that you're out of all of their areas. You want to stay here. If they start trying to swing their butt and you cannot get away, you want to pull them tight to keep their body over there, because they'll just mash you right up against this. And in some cases, they'll bring that foot up and they'll kick you while you're standing here also. But she's a good girl. We never really had a problem with her because I started tying her up at about 6 months. And she was also being tied right next to Mama, because I tied her on that side, when they were eating. So she got so associated with eating and being tied up that it never really was a problem when we first tied her up. And fortunately for me, from the time we started, she's never been able to break anything. So she usually calms right down once she's tied to something. And it's a lot easier for a lot of the things we do with her than trying to hold her out there for anything, because as you can see, she's real solid and she knows how to use her weight to push anybody out of her way. She doesn't have a problem with that. So when you tie up, you want to do what we call a daisy chain, and I will bring the camera closer so that you can see what we do. All right, now we were talking about how to tie a horse up, and now that we've got her to the point where she actually doesn't mind being tied up, now's a good refresher on how to actually tie your horse up. First of all, you never ever want to do anything like this. Don't put a knot in there. That, you're never going to get that loose. She's going to pull back. Again, physics, 600 pounds that way. This is never coming out of here. So what you want, try to get out of the frame of the camera so I can show you. You want to do what they call a daisy chain. Now before you do that, you want to put in a nice regular slip knot. So you want to take your rope here. You want to swing through. You got your loop. Put your loop through like that. So now you got a loop on this side and a line on this side. Now, you're tight. She's pulling it tight, she's pulling it tight, she's pulling it tight. You grab this rope, she's loose. This is going to come flying back. She's going to be perfectly okay. She's a little panicked, a little stressed, but she's going to be all right. You always want to make sure you have some kind of a slip knot in there that you can just pull it free so that they can't get it super tight. But you don't want all this hanging here either. So you're going to do what we call a daisy chain. You're going to loop, go through this loop, loop again, go through that loop, keep going until you have just your little tail hanging. I usually leave about that much hanging so that I know there's something there I can grab. Now, if she pulls back, she panics, all you have to do is that, she's loose again. What you don't want is to get severely tightened there so that you can't get her loose at all, because now she's panicking, you're panicking. Eventually she will stop pulling back. However, no one knows how much damage she's going to do between now and then. However, if you ever get to the point where this is so tight you cannot get it loose, and for whatever reason she's tangled up, she won't move forward, you can't get it free any other way, more barn equipment that you should have. Pocket knife. You can get one of these anywhere, pretty much. Walmart, Tractor Supply, Target, anything like that. Any hunting store. This is going to be so tight with that pressure. Yeah, I can tell you're real concerned. That pressure on it, you can easily cut through this rope. Not going to be a problem at all. You're going to have to saw a little bit, but you'll get through. Make sure your knife is sharp before you come out here. It's a pretty good idea to make sure your knife is always sharp. And she's going to be turned loose. And that's going to set her freedom back together. It's going to save you. It's going to save whatever she's tied to. And it's going to make it a little less stressful than what she's done. But again, the easiest thing, daisy chain all the way up to your slip knot, pull, and she's loose. A lot of horses are pretty good about this. They don't. There are also snaps you can get. This is just a regular snap, but they have what they call breakaways. That's what they'll have in horse trailers, so that if they get tangled up along with the leather halter, your breakaway snaps will pull. The problem with those that I don't like when I'm training is, again, if the halter breaks, the rope breaks, or if the line unsnaps, they associate pulling back with getting free. However, for a trailer situation, or if you have a horse, we have one here that you cannot tie at all. We always use a breakaway because it's guaranteed if he gets hung up in any way, shape, or form, he's going to pull back. It's just safer for us. The horse is 25 years old. He's never going to change. And a lot of times you just have to conform around how they are because it's so ingrained. But with the young horse like this, you can usually convince them that being tied up isn't that big a deal. So, but again, your biggest danger area is going to be if they pull back and you happen to be standing here. Now, she's used to it. You can walk away from her. She'll stay there tied up. She has no problem with this. You want to make sure when you tie that your line here is not super long, because what can happen, you just saw how she put her head down. If she puts her head down here and then swings her body, Sometimes this, because it's so long, will get up around here. Come here. And then when they pull back, now they are going to pull back because there's something scary there, and they're going to pull back, they're going to get tangled up, and this is just going to scare them completely to death. So you want to make sure that your line is not so long that they can get their head underneath it and pull back. You also want to make sure your line is not so long that they can get their foot over it, because horses will do that too. Then they're tied up and they've got a foot hanging here, and that is not a fun situation to be into. It can also cause massive rope burns on their legs. So you want to be careful when they're tied that they're long enough that they can move around, but they're also short enough that they can't hurt themselves. Because as anybody who has ever had horses will tell you, you can have a horse in a padded stall and they will figure out a way to hurt themselves in there if given enough time. It's just something that anybody who's ever had horses will tell you. It's amazing the things that they can come up with. So, left to their own devices and tied to a wall like this, it won't be long before they figure out some way to get themselves tangled up in this rope. And I think some of them do it just out of spite. But she's pretty good. You can walk away from her. She can stand there. I usually never leave the area when any of my horses are tied up. Even if they're in cross ties, I have a tendency to stay around the barn, just in case they pick that moment to pull back. And also, it's good practice to stay around and to not leave them loose or leave them tied, because there's so many different things that can go wrong. It's easier to unhook them, come back, and then just reattach them whenever you're done doing whatever called you away for the moment to begin with. So, but like I said, that's pretty much the easiest way that we have found here to start horses with being tied up. It's the safest way we've found so far to do this. I have in the past tied horses if we have foals out in the pasture with mom that we couldn't bring in for whatever reason. I've used the tree method with the bungee cord. It works really well. You have to stay there with them, but you know, you will see foals do some crazy things, but eventually they'll give up and you can tie them to anything. Again, tying them up when you're feeding them, another really good method to get them used to this. And also, I don't know if I covered this, you want to keep your movements pretty slow when you first tie them up and very deliberate. You want them to see, you can see she's watching everything I'm doing. You want them to see what you're doing. You don't want to just come in here and do everything real fast and they see that blur, they see your hands moving, so now it's something to be afraid of because it's something moving fast, it's something that they can't watch. You want to try to keep yourself as slow and calm as possible because they're going to read off of your body language. If you're just matter of fact and this is what we're doing and you're calm, they have a tendency to calm down a lot faster. If you come in and you've got a lot of energy and you're just messing with this and you're messing with them and you're moving around real herky-jerky, you can see every time my hands get too fast for her. She doesn't like that. Already, now you're teaching the horse that this is something they should be afraid of. They've got to keep watching. They are a prey animal. Anything starts moving like that and it's already got their ears up because they want to know what's happening. Where if you're slow and calm, it's usually not as much an issue. And it's something that seems very simple, but everything you do when you first start bonding with your horse is a foundation that you're going to build well into training. If you have a very good rapport with them, tying them up, if they understand that you're teaching them something and something's going to be good, then further down the line it's going to be much easier when you're introducing any kind of new thing to them, any training method, trailering. They're already learning that they can trust you. You're not hurting them, they're not hurting them, and everything that they're doing for the most part is getting a positive effect. So we want everything to start out like that because you're going to have this horse anywhere, if you get him as a foal, you're going to have them anywhere from 1 to 30 years. So you don't want this animal to be afraid of you or to not trust you because that's a long time to have to fight with something this big. It's much easier if you can start out on the right foot And you can keep them calm and keep them trusting you, because that way, when they do get themselves into a situation, they're going to be looking to you to get them out of it. They're not going to be trying to hurt you. So it makes life a lot easier than if you've got a horse that doesn't really care for you too much to begin with, and now they're in a mess, and you're the one that's got to come get them. So it's always easier, like I said, to start out on the right foot and make things fun for them, because in all reality, they're much smarter than people give them credit for, as you can see. And they're very curious, and they are open to new things. So it's just how we choose to present them that really sets the scene for how things are going to go further down the line. So I hope this was informative. I hope we were able to maybe show you a few things that fill in some gaps or some things that you might not have known. Or, you know, if anything else, I hope we at least gave you 15 minutes to watch a video and not just sit around bored. Yeah? And it's good for her anyway. Any kind of bonding like this is good for young horses. So I think she's done really good. But thank you, and I hope you come around for another video.